Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're going to give it just 1 minute more while we wait for people to come in. Just wanted to slide here. Good morning. We can see people coming in right now. We're just going to give it 1 more minute as we allow everyone to get here. All righty. Well, I see folks trickling in. And given that we only have 45 minutes today, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. And we'll make sure to catch people up later. This recording will be available afterwards, and we'll send it out to all participants. So if you were here late, you'll be able to come back and watch this from the beginning. Of course, I'm saying this to the people who can't hear that message, so that doesn't really make sense.
And just to make sure the screen's up and everyone can see it.
I'm getting a thumbs up on that.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Zach Hochastadt. I'm one of the founders of Mission Minded. Mission Minded is a strategy and creative firm that helps organizations improve their impact. We believe that the nonprofit organizations that make our world a better place need to be unapologetically bold about what sets them apart. So every day, we dive deep with our clients to uncover new ideas that attract more donors and raise more money for their causes. Because we know that what's worked in the last decade, or frankly, even the last few years, needs to be boldly reimagined to ensure that your organization is ready to meet the moment. Now, we were founded as a company because we saw a need within the nonprofit sector to help nonprofits tell their story more effectively. There have been lots of talented communicators over the years, but many have struggled to articulate what really makes an organization unique and how to tell that story in a way that makes sense from a time perspective. Now, we created today's session, Level Up Your Fundraising Messages, because we recognize that there is a challenge on the horizon. Many organizations have diverse fundraising streams, and many of you are getting funding from government sources. Who knows what the future is going to hold, but we know that every organization right now needs to be thinking about their individual fundraising programs in order to make sure that they're strong in the years ahead. And in order to meet that moment, to meet that challenge, we know that you need to have a strong brand and clear messaging in order to bring those supporters in that are going to help you thrive. So we're going to be talking today about how to do that. I'm joined here today by my colleague, Tia Robinson, who's a brilliant strategist and really does a great job of helping us and our clients tell their story more effectively. She's going to be talking in just a moment about some of the things that you should keep in mind. As we're talking to you today, we just want to remind you that we do all sorts of good things here at Mission Minded, from brand strategy to messaging to strategic planning. We help our clients bring their brands to life through visual identity and design, through websites and video, and in individual leadership coaching. And we've been fortunate over the years to have been able to serve hundreds and hundreds of nonprofit organizations that make our world a better place. And so whether those organizations are small nonprofits that have been founded in the church basement or large international organizations, we're here to help you tell your story more effectively. Today, we're going to be talking through our minute message model. We use this messaging structure to help organizations organize their thinking and to be more effective in how they tell their story. The minute message model begins with a high-level belief message. It works through then talking about some of the key challenges that exist in society and make it necessary for your organization to need to exist. We then get a chance to talk about impact and the results of your work before we get into the details. And we created this messaging structure because we saw that challenge that so many organizations wanted to first talk about the details, and they were losing audiences. People weren't paying attention, their eyes glazed over. And we know that through this structure, you can be far more effective. One of my favorite stories about this is years ago, we did a session similar to this, and there was a guy there, and this happened to be live and in person. So we were with these folks, and this guy Brad was sitting in the front row, and I just remember, he was carefully taking notes as we were talking. And Brad had an organization that brought together talented young Latino soccer players from around a region so they could play in front of international scouts. And one of the smart things that he did is he realized that if he was bringing together these players, he was also bringing together their families. And so he not only brought in these scouts, he brought in nonprofit organizations that were trying to reach those same audiences and those same families. It was a great idea, and it had a lot of opportunity for success. One of the things he found is that he kept approaching this same corporate sponsor, hoping that they would be a partner in funding this league, and he had gotten told no twice as he asked for their support. And one of the things he realized is that after coming to our session was that he was telling his story in the wrong way. He was flooding the potential funder with just too many details. Well, he changed how he was talking about his work. He adopted the minute message model. And as a result, when the third time he went back to this funder, he ended up getting a $500,000 sponsorship to fund the league. So that's the inherent promise today. Everyone gets a $500,000 sponsorship if they change their messages and adopt the minute message model. So that's all you have to do. I'm kidding. Of course, I'm kidding. One of the things we're going to be talking about as we go through this message model is that it aligns with the engagement funnel. And the engagement funnel basically says the first thing that happens is people have awareness about your organization, and that moves then into a place of interest, which then moves into a place of desire, where they want to actually engage with you, and then finally a place of action, where they take the desired action. So this may mean that they're first aware of the organization, but it moves to a place where they're ready to make a donation or volunteer their time or engage with you in a meaningful way. Tia, you are muted.
You would think after all these years, I would know how to unmute myself, but here we are. Before we teach the minute message model, we always like to share our favorite ways to make sure you're using inclusive language. The more inclusive messaging you use, the more people you can attract in and bring into your work. So when you think really deeply about what you say and how you say it, it gives you the opportunity to expand your fundraising and your messaging and open doors to new donors. We actually used to call this messaging basics, but we realized that it was creating a barrier for some people. And so even though we do this every day, we're always reflecting on our own messages to make sure that we're bringing people in. So first, our first tip is to use your name. Acronyms can be really confusing for audiences. It makes them feel like they're outsiders while you're insiders. So for example, when you think about the ASPCA, you think of an organization versus when you hear the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. While most people know what the ASPCA is, if you'd never heard of it before, you would have no idea who they were or what they do. You would probably just move on. You would say, oh, a collection of letters, and that would just be it. So both names send quite a different message, even though they're the same organization. The full name is more impactful, and it won't be easily confused or jumbled around in somebody's head. Our second tip is to avoid jargon, which is funny because the word jargon is actually jargon itself. So to define that, jargon is any word, phrase, acronym that's used in a particular group, organization, or setting. And jargon excludes listeners. So very similar to acronyms, if no one knows what the jargon means, they're just going to move on. It's gonna go in one ear and out the other, and they'll just glaze over it. So when you assume your audiences know what you're talking about, you're missing an opportunity to create a deeper connection with them. And for those of you here, we would love for you to throw in your favorite jargon term in the chat and see if you all can guess what they mean. So call out systems and not people. Every organization is started to solve a problem or to respond to a challenge or opportunity. So it's really important that you explicitly state what that problem is. We like to refer to this as name the thing. So especially as we start inviting more diverse stakeholders into our work, we can't allow language that supports these really outdated narratives. So we want you to name the societal reason and don't ascribe it to the person. Next is to repeat, repeat, repeat. we get exposed to 3,000, probably 5,000, maybe 10,000 messages at this point in time. And so nonprofits don't have the budgets to make the same amount of impressions as a company like Google or Apple does. So that means we need to repeat the same messages over a longer period of time while making sure what we're saying is consistent. Because we like to say this quote, just when you get sick of saying something is just when other folks begin to hear it. And one note about consistency is really important because if everyone is saying something different, your audiences won't know what to believe. And then you put the onus on them to decide what's the truth and what's not. Don't try and say it all. We like to give a lot of details, as Zach said. We like to put in as much information as humanly possible because we know the intricacies of our work. But when you give someone a fire hose of information, they won't really know what to hold on to, like what the important part of what you're saying is. And so it's hard for them to walk away with anything concrete. And then last, but certainly not least, we want you to highlight the benefit and not the feature. And so you want to talk about the why, the value of what you're doing, the value behind the program. So if let's say you have a program that is helping kids, you don't talk about, oh, the program lasts for this long or it does this. You want to talk about what the kids are getting out of it, how that's going to impact them, what it's going to do for society. So it's really important to highlight the benefit and not just the little details here.
You know, Tia, that reminds me of a quote, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but there was a Canadian neurologist named Donald Carnegie who wrote something along the lines of reason leads to conclusions while emotion leads to actions. And I always think about this when I think about features and benefits because so often we want to only live in the land of reason when we're communicating with our various stakeholders, but we forget that if we want people to actually do something, we have to give them a reason to do so. And emotion does a really good job of like tapping into that limbic system, that early part of our brain that is the fight or flight. And if we want people to care about a cause, to do something, we've got to make sure that we're giving them a reason to do so. And I'll just mention that emotion doesn't have to be anger or fear or pathos, which I think are obvious, oftentimes the emotions that come up most often, but they can be all sorts of things. They can be inspiration and excitement and many other things that can help people tap into a reason that they want to engage with our organizations. Well, that's a good
Exactly right.
segue then to thinking about our belief message. And as I said before, this aligns with the various stages of engagement. So the first is awareness. That when we are trying to get people to just be aware of us, we need to make sure that we are sharing with them our fundamental belief. Now, you heard me at the very beginning of this session share our belief message. And when I said that we're a strategy and creative firm that helps organizations improve their impact, and I said, we believe that the organizations that make our world a better place should be unapologetically bold about what sets them apart. And I continued on, and there's some other pieces to that. But every time I go to talk about mission-minded, I use that belief message, and everyone on the mission-minded team uses that message. The result is that we're sending a consistent understanding of who we are and helping other people understand why they would want to work with us. So just a little bit of wayfinding. I mentioned this message structure earlier. We're at that first stage that as we think about where we are, where we're just sharing our fundamental belief. Here's why we exist. And you should be doing the same thing when you go to talk about your organization. Some people talk about this as an elevator pitch. Maybe if you were all living the healthy lives that we're supposed to be living, we'll think about it as a stairway pitch instead. We'll take the stairs instead of the elevator. But the idea behind that is what's the idea that you can share in a very short amount of time. So for us, I mentioned that everyone on the team does this, but this is also a message that you can use in one way or another in social situations. Maybe you're at the sidelines of your kid's soccer game or at a party, or at a more formal setting. You're giving a speech at your year-end celebration or something of the like. When you share your belief message, what you're doing is you're putting a stake in the ground. You're helping to share high-level information about the organization. You're building a level of comprehension. You're suggesting the problems that you exist to solve as an organization. And all sorts of great examples of this. We recently worked with JBS in San Francisco, where they put their belief message right on their homepage of the site that we designed for them as a way of introducing people right away what they do. You can use it in your social media, like our client, California Change Lawyers. You might find that it makes a lot of sense to use your belief message in printed materials. It can be a great introductory bit of copy that you use right at the beginning of like a search piece or an annual report. In presentation slides, as you're going out to meet with major donors, having a strong belief message is powerful and motivates people to action. So this is an example from a campaign that we recently worked on with the San Francisco Foundation, where they say, we believe the promise of the Bay Area is the promise that here everyone can prosper and thrive. For 75 years, the San Francisco Foundation has united government, business, philanthropy, and community to fight for a Bay Area that works for and welcomes all kinds of people. Racial equity and economic inclusion are in the spotlight now, but we must seize this moment to build collective power. Through the Collective Power campaign, you add yourself to this momentous effort. You power the promise of the Bay today and for generations to come. So you can hear how that powerful belief message right off the bat helps to position the organization and invite others in for engagement. You know, the fundamental idea behind a belief message is that you share here's what we believe. And therefore, we do this, and here's the because. So I'm going to move to sharing an example of how this actually comes to life. And we just recently had the opportunity to work with the Bay Area Discovery Museum, a children's museum that is in Sausalito, California, right across the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco. And on their About Us section of their website, which don't go look at it right now, but go look at it. We're really proud of the Bay Area Discovery Museum site. You'll go over there. But what they say in their belief message is, we believe that children grow and thrive through joyful play. So every day we create joyful learning experiences that inspire a lifelong passion for discovery in every child and connect them with the people in the world around them, because play is essential to children's well-being. And when children and families thrive, our communities thrive. So what you'll see in here are three really important keywords. The first is believe. We believe that children grow. So by talking about their high-level belief, they bring people in, they help align others with that shared belief. The second really important phrase here is every day. And we start to talk about what are the actions we take on a daily basis, and it forces us to use active verbs to describe what we're doing. And then the third thing is because. When we use a because, we help people engage with the why and make them think about what we're really doing to help our communities thrive. So we believe, so every day, because. And I share those three, really it's four words, but those four words, because if you can remember that, you can very easily remember your belief message. And I'll say, no one likes to be scripted. And yet when you commit your belief message to memory and everyone on your team can say and use it, it becomes this powerful way of making sure that you are consistently building a strong reputation over time. So we're going to come back to the belief message in a little bit and give you a chance to write your own belief messages. But before we do, we're going to talk through the other levels of the Minute Message Model and how that can strengthen your messaging structure.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the interest phase, and that aligns with our problem message here. And that's where your audiences are learning more about your organization and why you need to exist. So when Zach introduced Mission Minded, after he gave our belief message, he also said that Mission Minded was founded because we saw a problem in the nonprofit sector, and he went on to explain what that problem was. And that was Mission Minded's problem message. And it was also setting us up to be the solution there. So as a reminder, your belief message explains who your organization is, and the problem message explains why that matters or why your organization is needed. So when do you use your problem message? You use it when the belief message piques someone's interest. They say, oh, tell me more. And that's when you do. Or in written communications, on tours with current partners or prospective donors, on the secondary pages of your website, in grant applications, or on social media. Those are all great places to put your problem message. So let's take a look at the problem message from Bay Area Discovery Museum. So their problem message reads, our formal education system doesn't honor all the ways in which children learn, grow, and thrive. Research shows us that the most intuitive and effective ways children develop skills and learn to navigate their world is through play. Yet traditional approaches to teaching and learning leave little to no time for free play. This results in school experiences absent of joy and where play is seen as a non-essential extra. So here, Bay Area is talking about a problem where you might not have thought of about that before. They're saying this is a societal issue, and then it's also setting them up to be the solution. They're implying the value that they're bringing to their community here. And so that's your problem message. Zach, do you want to jump in? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it can sometimes be daunting when you see a
Mhm.
long like this and say, oh my goodness, there's no way my team is going to be able to memorize all of that. And I would say, you're right. There's no way that your team is going to be able to memorize all of this, and nor would you expect them to. What you want them to do, though, is understand this problem and be able to speak about it authentically and in their own voice and communicate this idea. So while you do want them to remember and memorize the belief message, by the time you're moving into your problem message, you simply need people on your team to be able to comprehend this idea and be able to communicate it in their own words.
Yeah, I think thanks for drawing attention to that, because I think the parts that we highlighted in this problem message, if anyone on your team could remember those 2 points, then they've got it. They could fill in the rest at their own will. And it also makes it less sort of stiff. But if they could remember those 2 points, then they pretty much have the problem message down packed and they could fill in the details as they go.
Yeah, that's right, Tia. Thank you. Well, as we start to think about the next phase, we start to think about impact stories, which is going to create desire for people to want to engage with the organization and to really have a passion for wanting to engage with you. An example of an impact story, you'll remember that earlier I shared the story about Brad and how he ended up getting that $500,000 donation to his or sponsorship for his organization. That's an example of an impact story. I think, as we move through here, I'm going to share one more, and you'll see that a story doesn't have to be everything. It doesn't have to summarize absolutely everything about the organization. It can just be a powerful anecdote that brings to life the impact that you're having. So as we think about where we are in this message structure, we started with that belief message, that high-level understanding of why you need to exist, sort of the elevator pitch. We then move into the problem message, which helps people understand the why. And then the third step is to talk about the impact that you're having. And the most effective way you can talk about impact is with story. Now, I know that most of us think that what we have to do is share a whole lot of data. And we want to share facts and figures and numbers and percentages in order to show that we're having the kind of impact we want to have. But the truth is most of us won't remember that data. What we do remember are stories, and what we transmit to other people are stories. And so that's why, even though you might want and need to share data along the way, great, but make sure that you're also sharing the stories that show the impact that you're having in the world, because that's what motivates your donors. That's what motivates your volunteers to want to be a part of the organization. So why do we tell stories? We tell stories because people remember them, because our brains are hardwired to be thinking about stories and to transmit stories. We have a slide up here, and they lived happily ever after, because it's a reminder that a lot has changed in nonprofit storytelling in the last 15 years or so. When we started Mission Minded over 20 years ago, the kinds of stories that we were telling were oftentimes these stories of somebody had a problem, and then organization came along and they saved the day, and everybody lived happily ever after. And the problem with this kind of storytelling is that it is deficit based. It basically makes it so that the person about whom we're telling this story is seen as not an effective player in their own future. And so what we want to do instead is tell the kinds of stories that lift people up and that are it's called asset-based storytelling. And frankly, we could spend an entire hour talking about asset-based storytelling or more. We're not going to do that today, but I do want to mention Travian Shorters, who is an expert in asset-based storytelling. He runs the Be Me community, and it's really worth seeking his work out as a guide towards really thinking about how do you do asset-based storytelling effectively. I think what we want to stress right now is when you're telling a story, why do we tell them? We want to tell stories to explain the impact of the organization and to help illustrate what makes you unique amongst your peers. So you're telling stories because it reinforces the unique special thing that makes your organization needed and for others to want to partner with you. And you're going to tell your stories in all sorts of different places. You'll tell your story when someone wants to know more during a speech, you tell them on your website and your social media. Video obviously is a really effective media for telling story. It's built for that. And so we want to encourage you to make sure that you have a library of stories that your organization can tell. A good story also just, it fundamentally reminds people about what you stand for. And I'm going to go and tell you all a story because I think I'll show rather than tell. And one of my favorite stories is a simple anecdote. It doesn't have to be like, oh my God, this is the whole thing and the world changed and it was all better. A simple anecdote can go a long way. So an example of this is until recently, I sat on the board of directors for the Denver preschool program. And at the time, one of my fellow board members was Mike Yankovich, who is the head of the Children's Museum of Denver. So just an acknowledgement, we've been talking about the Bay Area Discovery Museum, which is another children's museum. Now I'm talking about the Children's Museum of Denver. And Mike comes in and he says, before we start our meeting today, I just got to share something that happened. He said, I was standing outside in Joy Park, which is the newly built outdoor play area at the museum. And he's like, I just was feeling all of this pride. I'm looking up and seeing all that we had managed to build through our recent capital campaign. And as I'm looking up, one of my staff members comes running up to me and she says, Mike, we have a problem. There's a young girl and she has dug a trench across one of our permanent pathways. And Mike goes up the hill to go do something about it because that's what you do when you're in charge. And sure enough, Mike goes up the hill and he gets to this pathway, and this little girl has dug a trench across his pathway. So he looks down at her and he says, what are you doing there? And she looks up at him and she says, I'm learning about hydrology. And she goes over and she gets a bucket of water and she pours the water on one side and the water goes through the trench that she dug and it meets up with this waterway on the other side of the pathway. Mike's kind of dumbfounded. I mean, that's not the answer he was expecting. But he realizes in that moment that this is everything that the museum stands for. Self-guided play that helps young minds like unlock ideas and learning for themselves. The resilience that she showed in digging that thing, it must have taken her like 20 to 30 minutes to dig that thing. And it's all of the values, all of the qualities that the museum exists to do, to help children unlock new ideas and to open doors for young minds. So of course, they put that path together again at the end of the day. But in that moment, Mike just let her be and let her keep doing her thing. And so when I share this story, what I want you to realize is that I told this story in a way that was just a simple little moment of what happened. Your story doesn't have to be, and then the entire world changed, and that girl went off to college, and now she's an engineer who's going to save us all from global climate change. The story can simply be this moment, and it reinforces who the organization is and what it does. And that's what we want you to be able to do as well.
I must say, Zach, that's one of my favorite stories that you tell.
Thanks, Pia.
Okay. So the last phase lines up with the action phase. And what you want here, that's when you want your audiences to finally say yes to you, whether it's yes to donating, volunteering, or just engaging in your organization at a whole. You want them to say yes. And the way you do that is through detail messages. And detail messages essentially demonstrate the how of your organization. And usually when we're talking about our organization and what we do, that's what we start with, as Zach mentioned in the beginning. We start with the minor details, our day-to-day, because that's what we're familiar with. And that's the thing that we're working on. But your audiences, they don't care about that. They don't know enough about you to understand the details and understand why they matter. And so once you've gone through the funnel of belief, problem, impact, that's when the detailed messages start to matter to them. And they say, oh, I get it. It's sort of a full circle moment. And so the details really explain how you achieve results. They explain your programmatic details, and then it invites the reader or whoever you're speaking to into the specifics of the work that you're doing. So when should you use it? You want to use this on your website if you have a page explaining your programs, or if you're doing a fundraising campaign, there would be a great place. You might put it in a grant proposal. If you're at a fair, that might be a good opportunity to tell someone about the details. When you're in a meeting with a partner or a donor, and then when you're explaining services to clients. So those are all great places to start talking about the details here. So how should we link the features to the benefits in your messages? So Zach actually did this really expertly when he introduced us and started talking about this webinar. He told you that we were going to talk about this framework and give you a set of messages that would make people understand the value of your organization and why you should exist. But notice what he didn't do. He didn't say how many parts there were, how long it would take, what you needed to do to get to the end. He spoke about the value that it would bring to you. And that's the thing that drew you in and got you excited, because he explained what you were going to get out of it at the end of the session. So back to Bay Area Discovery Museum, we have a detail message from them in their Try It studio. So in their Try It studio, when young children are introduced to math, design, and engineering in unexpected ways, they learn to solve real-world problems in a joyful play environment. In the Try It studio, young children can code a new song on a giant music box, experiment with levers and buttons on a drawing arm, and tackle monthly design challenges. So while they were talking about this Try It studio, they could have said how big it was. They could have said it had 20 computers and it has 30 different robots and the colors are green, blue, and red. They could have given you all of those details. But what it focused on instead is what would happen in that studio. They explain that children are introduced to these things in unexpected ways, and that's really the value that you're getting out of the studio. It doesn't matter about the technology and how much they have, how much it costs, how big it is. What matters is that the children are learning through play. And so in detail messages, what we want to do is we want to talk about that value first. You want to talk about the why these things matter. And then in the subsequent sentences, the second or third, if you have one, that's when you can give a little bit more of those details that we're accustomed to. But it's important to set up the value and the why first.
I once had a mentor early in my career who said, never share a feature of your program without also sharing the benefit. If you're going to talk about what something is, you have to pair it with, and here's why that matters. So I actually want to take one moment to say that, I started off by saying this is an unusual moment in time. We recognize that a lot of organizations right now need to ramp up their messages rather rapidly in order to meet the moment. In order to do that, we've changed some of the services that we provide, and we've created a couple of specific fundraising opportunity. These are packages that you can call on to ramp up your messages, to ramp up your work rather quickly. We will send out an email about this after today's session. So if you are on this webinar, you are going to get an email that helps you understand how you can take advantage of this. This will include some opportunities around developing targeted messaging, around creating custom design content, having rapid responses at the go, thinking about all of the different levels of your donor engagement, and then possibilities for expert and hands-on support. So we're excited about this. This is, a different way for us of thinking about how we can provide services that meet the moment, that allow you to rapidly get out there and make the changes that you need to make, because I think all of us need to go out and do some good work in the coming months. Thank you for that, but we're going to now take one moment to give you an opportunity to think about your belief message and ask you to really question, what can you do? How can you strengthen your message? So you are about to get a little bit of homework. Don't run away, but we're going to ask everybody who's on this webinar to try out what we were talking about a little bit earlier in terms of our belief message. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have this sort of Mad Libs exercise that can help you think of the belief message for your organization. So what we want you to do is take the next, let's say, 3 minutes and fill in the blanks in this Mad Lib. So you're going to say, at whatever organization, we believe blank, and that's the deeply held value. And every day we do this thing for our constituents because this happens, or if we don't, this won't happen. And so we want you to just take some time. It's not easy. We know sometimes this takes us months and we do this every day, but we want you to try to take the next 3 minutes to come up with those ideas on your own. And if this Mad Libs version isn't working, what might help is if you think of the three concepts that you want to talk about in this belief message. So you could think about them in concepts, or you can fill it in this Mad Libs version.
While you're working on that, I'm going to reread Bay Area Discovery Museum's belief message as an inspiration. So it is, we believe that children grow and thrive through joyful play. So every day we create playful learning experiences that inspire a lifelong passion for discovery in every child and connect them with the people in the world around them. Because play is essential to children's well-being. And when children and families thrive, our communities thrive. So as a reminder, what you've heard in that belief message is we believe a deeply held value. In this case, their belief is that children grow and thrive through joyful play. And then there's that every day, which forces you to use active verbs to describe what you're doing. In this case, it's create and inspire. And then finally, there's that because. Here's the why this matters. Here's why you should care. And in this case, it is because play is essential. And when children and families thrive, our communities thrive. So you can see those three pieces at play. We believe every day because, and you're thinking about this now in terms of your own organization. What does your organization uniquely and deeply believe? What do you do every day that brings that belief to life? And what's your why? What happens as a result of you doing that work? Or what would happen if you didn't do that work? We're going to give you just another minute here on that.
And again, we know these are going to be really rough drafts. We've only given you a couple of minutes, but just try to get those big ideas and do not stress too much.
I think about this in terms of organizations that I've been a part of as well. And, I sat on the board of directors for the Levitt Pavilion in Denver, which is an outdoor amphitheater that provides up to 50 free concerts a year. And when I think about that, the belief message might be something like, at the Levitt Pavilion of Denver, we believe that outdoor musical experiences bring communities together. So every day, or up to 4 times a week, we host a free concert out on the lawn that makes it possible for people to hear professional musicians and watch people dance on the lawn as they listen, because we know that when communities celebrate together, they are stronger for it. Now, I just made that up on the fly, but that's the kind of thing that we do within this structure of a belief message.
Do we have any very, very brave volunteers that would like to share in the chat? Or you could come off mute if you want. But would anyone like to share the belief message that they're starting?
See that David did. I'll read it out loud. It goes at LANLT, and I'm pausing right there, David, because one of Tia's messages for her things about inclusivity was to make sure that we spell it out. So thank you.
No
The
acronyms.
Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust. Okay. At the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust, we believe green spaces transform lives and communities. Every day, we partner with residents to create parks, gardens, and opportunities for community engagement for low-income Angelinos, because everyone deserves access to nature, no matter their zip code. That is extraordinary. Well done, David.
Wow.
Yeah, we're really impressed by what you did there. Also, I did some work a little while back with the REI Cooperative Action Fund, and that's the kind of thing that might be in alignment with their giving. So I hope you'll reach out to them and if you haven't already. Yes, good. Um, anyone else want to share? I see Emily has as well. Do you want to read this out loud or can you see it to you?
Um, can you
I'm,
pop it up?
I'm happy to if you don't see it.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sharing, so I don't know where it's gone on my screen.
At the Napa, whenever you're in Zoom and you're doing this, like, oh my God, there's so many windows.
Things are just not where they're supposed to be. I don't get it.
At the Napa Valley Grape Growers, we believe stewardship of the land is a shared responsibility. Every day, we empower growers with science-based resources and guidance for the betterment of our agricultural community because healthy vineyards mean a thriving Napa Valley. I love that. I think you did a really good job there. There's a few places where uh, we we sometimes would say, how can you take the language that's in here and make it more accessible to somebody who might be at a lower reading level? And I think that's the one opportunity, Emily, you might think about is there's a few words in here like stewardship and betterment and stuff like that that might feel like they are words that are geared towards a college level reader. And how could you take this and make it so that even those who are perhaps working in the vineyards would understand it as well? And so, but overall, this is really solid. I think you did a great job of adopting the belief message framework here and putting it to use. We have
Awesome, great.
yeah, we have several clients up in Napa as well, so we love seeing that you're there, Emily. Thank you for doing the good work that you're doing. Well, we are really excited about all the great work that people are doing here. And thank you to both Emily and David for sharing their examples. That really helps us and helps you. We would love anyone else who is a participant here, or if you're watching the video afterwards, if you want to email us with your belief message and ask us to give you feedback on it, it is our pleasure to do so. So please reach out to either of us over email and let's talk about either your belief message or anything else that's going on as a challenge for your organization. We're eager to be in that conversation with you. All right. Well, with that, we'll say if there are any questions, please put them in the chat. Otherwise, feel free to go ahead and log off. And we say thank you. We're glad you were here with us today.
Thank you.